can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, I'm going to be breaking down X-Men Red number 9 by Al Ewing and Stefano Caselli. In the previous issue of X-Men Red number 8, we learned that Vulcan is back after having been killed by Tarn the Uncaring earlier in X-Men Red number 3. We also learn in this issue that originally Vulcan was not going to be resurrected, that because of how he was acting, because of the things that are going on with him, they decided that it was best if maybe, just maybe, Vulcan sit back in the resurrection protocols in what they refer to as a tertiary position in the resurrection protocols, meaning that he was very likely not going to get out for quite a while. But because of everything that happened with Magneto in the Judgment Day event, the fact that he had gotten rid of his resurrection protocol backup, that he can no longer be resurrected by normal Krakoan means, this meant that because Magneto wanted to stay dead and right now they're lacking in terms of Omega level mutant firepower, this is one of those questionable decisions that Magneto had warned Storm about that Charles was going to start making in Magneto's absence. This is one of those things where it's like, how is Charles Xavier not seeing that Vulcan should not be brought back after everything he had been doing up to this point? For those who have not been keeping up, Vulcan, since he made his triumphant return in Jonathan Hickman's X-Men number 1 in 2020, one of the things that's been revealed since then is that his X-Men teammates, Petra and Sway, who died during the events of Deadly Genesis, it was highly implied that along with Vulcan, they were also resurrected. But as we learned, that's actually not the case. Petra and Sway were on the X-Men team before Charles Xavier had actually begun backing up every mutant in existence. And while technically they have the waiting room now where mutants can just come back if they want to, and once again, as I mentioned earlier with Magneto, he could do the same thing, but he doesn't want to, so that's why we're not gonna see Magneto anytime soon. At least, I don't think for a while. I think Magneto is gonna be sunset for, I would say, at least a year or so. Maybe less, who knows? It depends on how bad things get. But getting back to Petra and Sway, they have yet to actually come back. The Petra and Sway we have been seeing are actual psionic constructs that Vulcan has created, that not only he can see, but other people on Krakoa can see and interact with. Not only that, but because of the fact that Vulcan never actually truly died, he was actually found floating in the vault by some of Orbis Stellaris' creations, the progenitors. They manipulated him in such a way that he became a sort of sleeper agent for Orbis Stellaris, and it's been later revealed that this was all a part of Orbis Stellaris' plan to embed a sleeper cell program in him that would keep him docile and dormant and no longer acting like the Mad King of old when he was the ruler of the Shi'ar Empire during the War of Kings story arc, and that his true personality would not resurface until he died and was resurrected. And that's why Vulcan is back with a vengeance, acting less like the more docile version of the character that we've gotten used to since House of X began, and going back to what he was before we last saw him. For those who don't remember, Vulcan during the War of Kings event acted an entire monkey. He was destroying civilizations just for the fun of it and ruling the Shi'ar galaxy with an iron fist. I would even say more like a molten iron fist. And the only reason that Xandra sits on the throne of the Shi'ar Empire today is because Black Bolt of the Inhumans fought Vulcan to the death, and while neither character actually died, it was heavily believed that when Vulcan fell into the fault, this rip in the space-time continuum, it was highly believed that Vulcan was gone. But as we learned, Orbis Stellaris was the one who found him, and now they are using him as a tool to create full-scale war because Vulcan has shown up at just the right time. In the previous issue, we discussed how Xandra is revealing to the Skrulls of the Kree Skrull Empire that one of the biggest mass genocides the Kree ever perpetrated against the Skrull is because the Shi'ar lied to the Kree and tricked them into destroying a peaceful Skrull settlement. Lying to them, telling the Kree that the Skrull were creating a super weapon on a nearby planet, but in fact, it was just a rehabilitation center that was meant to help Skrulls who had lost the ability to shape change. There was no war effort anywhere to be found on that planet. And now that the Skrulls know the truth, they now want to wage war against the Shi'ar Empire. And with Vulcan being back in the saddle, it means that he wants to take his throne back from the quotey fingers pretender Xandra. This is creating a war on all fronts scenario that Orbis Stellaris wants to take advantage of, because as we have learned over the course of X-Men Red as well as Al Ewing's previous series of Sword, Orbis Stellaris wants to create war and chaos wherever they can in order to foster civilizations and planets, in order to sell powerful weapons technology to the various and sundry planets and empires across the cosmos who will need it. And right now, what bigger war could there be than the Kree-Skrull Empire attempting to go to war with the Shi'ar while the former Emperor Vulcan is trying to take back the throne of the Shi'ar? This is a full-scale war effort on a level that the galaxy has yet to have seen in quite some time. And Orbis Stellaris stands to profit beautifully from it, likely attempting to sell their fake progenitors and their phony lethal legions to all sides involved. By this point, it's likely no surprise that Orbis Stellaris lives by the old MCU Tony Stark adage, keep your friends rich, keep your enemies rich, and wait to find out which is which. And that's not even really the only true problem, because now that Vulcan has pulled up on Xandra attempting to take the throne back, we learn that Xandra was never really there to begin with. Xandra is actually somewhere in hiding, and it's not revealed exactly where she is. It's also never revealed where the child of Deathbird and Vulcan is being kept hidden either. We've never known exactly where this kid has been. This child that was first mentioned in X-Men Volume 4, number 18 in 2014, has not really been seen in quite some time, and we don't even really know what's going on. But this child is being brought up for a reason and very well likely will finally be revealed very soon. But that's neither here nor there, because Xandra's not there. Who the heck is Vulcan talking to? And when Vulcan tries to kill Xandra by burning her alive, this is when we realize it's actually Sunspot who is immune to Vulcan's flames, using Shi'ar tech to mask himself to look and sound like Xandra to trick Vulcan into acting. One thing I want to divorce everyone of the idea of is that don't think for 5 seconds with all the bravado that Sunspot has here in this moment against Vulcan, while Vulcan seems to not fully trust whether or not he can actually defeat Sunspot. The truth of the matter is he probably could quite easily, because at the end of the day, Vulcan is not only superhumanly strong, but also superhumanly durable. While Sunspot technically has superhuman strength, he doesn't have superhuman durability, at least not in the same way that other people who are superhumanly strong tend to have. He has more what is referred to as enhanced durability. He's not bulletproof by any stretch of the imagination, and in the past, Sunspot has gotten wrecked by things that other mutants who are superhumanly durable are unbothered by. Over the years, Sunspot's powers have evolved, so it's safe to say maybe he is more superhumanly durable than he used to be in the past. That said, it's made very plain by Deathbird that Vulcan would have killed him, and Sunspot doesn't even fight the notion of it. So I think it's safe to say his durability is only considered enhanced as opposed to superhuman. So it's probably for the best that Vulcan didn't call Sunspot's bluff, because prior to this, he's already run roughshod over characters like Gladiator, Frenzy, the Power Skrull, Pybok, and various other characters. Sunspot would have been light work for Vulcan at best. Now, earlier I did a lot of talking about Orbis Stellaris, but I didn't really talk about any of the things going on with Orbis Stellaris in this particular issue. In the previous issue, Orbis Stellaris had caught wind of Cable, Thunderbird, Weaponless Jen, and Manifold sneaking into his secret base. Not only that, but they discovered a lot of Orbis Stellaris' plans that I mentioned earlier, and something happens at the end of this issue that is making me really curious, because while the team is able to easily dispatch Orbis Stellaris despite the fact that he's using one of his progenitor forms, he does unleash his creations, what he refers to as his heralds, upon Cable's loose-knit team, and what happens is something I thought was very surprising, and something I think is going to come back to bite Orbis Stellaris in the long run. The same technique that they used to take Vulcan apart and reconstruct him in the way they wanted him to be, they do the same thing to the character of Manifold. While we don't get to see what happens next when they start ripping Manifold apart, I'm starting to wonder whether or not Manifold is going to reveal that he is actually able to control this entire scenario. For those unfamiliar, Manifold has the ability to speak with the universe, with space and time, and ask it to do whatever he wants. And right now, it kind of seems like what these heralds are doing is more or less manipulating space-time to turn his body inside out. I'm starting to wonder if Manifold's actually going to be able to get around this, because if Manifold can ask the universe to allow him to hold the sun in the palm of his hand, I think this is just another Tuesday for him. As for what's going on with Abigail Brand, all we see of Abigail Brand's issue is her just watching all of the various and sundry events that are going on in this issue unfold. We don't really learn any more information about what her ultimate plan is, other than the fact that she has completely written off Frenzy, even though Frenzy has been incredibly loyal to Brand throughout all of this. Granted, she's been kept in the dark about a lot of things, and she's not being paid the way Mentallo is. Mentallo's loyalty has been bought. Frenzy gave her loyalty to Abigail Brand willingly because Frenzy is trying to be a better person, and oftentimes I feel like when characters that used to be supervillains are trying to be better people, one of two things almost always happens. Either people don't want to give them a fair chance, or people do give them a fair chance, but it's the wrong people, and they take advantage of the fact that that person wants to try to be better and manipulate them into still continuing to do bad things, but disguising it as doing what's right. And that person who wants to be better being so desperate to be better that they don't see that they are being used. We've actually seen this with characters like Titania in the past on the She-Hulk side of things, and various other characters as well that escape my mind right now because we're doing this off the dome. But right now, the only thing that's really changed in regards to Abigail Brand's plan is that Sunspot is more aware of why she's doing what she's doing, not so much exactly what she's doing, but he's putting himself in her shoes and maybe even using his new position on the night seats to garner more information and likely figure out exactly what all is going on. But I think by the end of all of this, I feel like Abigail Brand is going to have enemies storming the gates, because right now, if Cable and Thunderbird and Weaponless Jen and Manifold know what's going on, then it's safe to say Sunspot is not far behind them, and we already know the Storm kind of seems to be up to speed on some of the things that are happening, because when we get to the end of this issue, when Vulcan is trying to take down Xander, which, mind you, this is a targeted attack that Abigail Brand has orchestrated, Storm is already there waiting to give Vulcan his round 2. If you haven't been keeping up, not too long after Vulcan's return in X-Men Red #2, he got bodied by Storm. Vulcan's power to manipulate and siphon energy, which typically he tends to manifest in the form of flames and molten lava and fire, Storm was able to completely negate all of it using her weather manipulation abilities. And while Vulcan was trying to siphon the electricity that Storm was using against him, she overloaded him and knocked him completely on his ass. So we're gonna see round 2 of this. Will Storm actually be able to defeat Vulcan a second time? Omega level mutant versus Omega level mutant? It's hard to say this time, and while normally I would always back Storm, because I'm always rooting for everybody black, but all that aside, the stakes are actually a bit higher for Storm now, because much like Magneto, Storm's Cerebro backup is destroyed. So if she dies, she can't come back. I mean, she technically could, and so could Magneto, but it would completely ruin the relationship that Krakoa has with Arakko right now, because this was all done in an effort for the Krakoans who are serving on the Great Ring of Arakko to prove that they were willing to do things the Araki way as opposed to doing things the Krakoan way. So it's anybody's guess at this point, but whatever the case is, Vulcan v Storm 2 is not going to be the one-sided ass-kicking that the first one was. That much I'm willing to say. But anyways, let me know what you thought about X-Men Red #9. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.